Hello and thank you for joining me. My name is Dustin Webb, and this is my presentation of the state of the air transportation. This assignment is credible to my Aviation Air Transportation Management class of AVSC 2160. Let's begin. The thesis for this research is to research the state of the air transportation industry. This research will include the stats of the airline industry dating from 1978 till now. So from these two pictures we can see an obvious upgrade in advancement and aviation technology just from these two pictures. And I think that they've made a FAR that you can't ride on top of airplanes anymore. So let's begin. So for starters, we have our capacity profits chart. This graph shows us the stats we have on the net profit, the RPKs, and the ASKs. And this stands for revenue passenger kilometers or miles and available seats kilometers or miles. So right here on the dotted line shows our ASKs. Right here on the RPKs on the solid line shows our RPKs. And so we see starting from 1978 we have a gradual ascending trend of both, going up to about $20,000 in RPKs at just 2014. We also see that our profits started out as little lows and little highs, getting into bigger profits and also bigger losses, especially in 2008 when we experienced a recession. But in the past recent 4 years or 6 years, we have had a positive on our profits, which is good. So something we can say about this graph as we look and dissect it is the ASKs right here are always higher than the RPKs. This means that per flight or per aircraft flight, there is always available seats that are not filled yet. This goes to say that our load factor is not 100%. There's more seats to fill in, is what we're saying. And to get this load factor, so the load factor that I speak of it's measuring the utilization. For example, if I had one aircraft that had 100 seats, then it would be most profitable to fill those 100 seats and get paid for each one instead of filling about 50 of the seats, about 50%. You would make more money if you use the highest load factor. You get the load factor by dividing the revenue passenger kilometers by the available seats per kilometers. And let's check that on the next graph. Okay, here on our load factor margin chart, we see the net margin again, and also the load factor and the break-even load factor. So the load factor we were speaking of is the solid line right here. And that is also has an ascending trend until now. And right here's the break-even load factor. So this means this is what was happening at this time, and this means that whatever they sold, or this right here on this dotted line, was the standard to just break even of all of their profits. This would mean to all of their profits would need to surpass their expenses, operating expenses, and to pay salaries for the employees. And so we see here when we have the load factor line over the break-even load factor line, we're making a profit. And so most of the times we are over that dotted line. There are moments ranging from 1990 to 1994 that we weren't making any profits. And same right here with 2002 to 2006. And then we were lucky in 2008 to just barely break even. And again, the break-even load factor means, I'll explain it again. It means the revenue that you get from this job or from the airlines barely meets enough to pay off all the expenses and to pay the salaries. So anything above the break-even load factor would be a profit. All right, here is a graph of the oil prices. The oil price has a huge effect on the industry of aviation because we depend on this. So in 1999 we had low oil prices, and then it definitely got higher towards 2008. 2008, in our recession, the price of oil barrels shot up really fast. And so when the price of oil is high, the price of jet fuel is even higher. And you can see that right here on the yellow dotted line on this graph is the jet fuel. It's always just above the price of regular crude oil. So this is important to the aviation industry because we need it to fuel our airplanes. And it also has a big chunk in our operating expenses. And now, to finish our presentation, we have the yield, and the yield being the average airfare paid. And so we see this dotted line right here is the adjusted yield in 2010 dollars, going all the way up to 2010, and the real yield. So we see things from 1978 starting to come together. More people are flying airplanes, and we are charging bigger prices for them to fly. All right. Well, this concludes my presentation on the aviation air industry and the research and stats of it. Thank you for joining me. For any other questions, you can ask me, or you could ask my teacher, Dr. Ryan, and they could help you out. Thank you for joining me.